Hi, I'm Sarah, and I was diagnosed with Hodgkins lymphoma at 25 years old in 2018. I was diagnosed classic Hodgkin's lymphoma, and this means that, actually, I have no idea what it means, but Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma are two separate types of cancers that are lymphomas and are a part of the blood cancer family, as well as leukemia. Hodgkin's lymphoma affects the immune system, and I was getting sick, not a lot, but I did have sinus infections more than the average person. I would only get bronchitis once a year, but other than that, I only had like sinus infections. One other thing though that was a symptom of Hodgkin's lymphoma was I had very severe eczema, and I have had it since I was a kid. I've always had it, but it got really bad the last like 2 years, like almost to the point where I went to the emergency room actually in 2017 in December because I could not sleep because the itching was so bad. But the rash had really gotten out of control, and I later found out that that is actually a symptom of an immune disorder, not necessarily just a symptom for Hodgkin's lymphoma, so don't freak out if you have eczema, you don't have cancer. Hodgkin's lymphoma is also not a genetic cancer, so my kids will more than likely not have it. It is due to your environment, so I'm really not quite sure where I got it from, to be honest. I mean, I wish I knew. That's like your first question when you do get diagnosed, is how. But I do have a theory of where I got it, but you know, I don't really know for sure, and I will never know for sure. So when you're first diagnosed, everything happens very, very quickly. I was diagnosed while I was in school. I was a senior in college at the time. I still am. I'm finishing my last semester. So everything happened really fast. Like within a span of a week, I knew exactly what I had and already had my doctors had a plan on how to treat it. So in today's video, we are going to be talking about my diagnosis story, how I found out everything, which is always like one of the first questions after what type of cancer do you have, which I do not mind answering at all. And we're also going to talk about my first chemo and my hair loss in this video. So I had a sinus infection in November, and I went to the doctor and just got an antibiotic and a steroid, and normally that would treat it and everything would be fine, but this time I just felt really, really sick. So the next weekend, or the next week, on the 13th, I went to the doctor again and asked for an x-ray because I felt so sick. I thought I had pneumonia. I mean, I was coughing to the point that I was throwing up. So I wanted to get checked out. The doctor asked me if I had had a chest x-ray in the past, and I told her yes, for bronchitis, you know, to check to see if it was pneumonia. And she was like, okay, well, we found something in your x-ray, and we think that you should get checked out and get a CT scan. So I went directly from the doctor's office straight to getting a CT scan with contrast, and it took like, I had to wait for, it was probably like 30 minutes, but it just felt like so long. It felt like hours to talk to the radiologist to see, you know, what was on the scan. And he didn't say flat out that it was cancer, but he did say that he thought it was a type of lymphoma. He couldn't tell me which one it was because they'd have to do a biopsy, of course, but that I need to see an oncologist immediately. So I met with my oncologist on Thursday, and the very next day we were going for a biopsy to test to see what kind of cancer I had, or if I had cancer. So the next day we went down to get a biopsy, and they took the biopsy out of my left breast, which is where my my lymph node is, and it was a pretty quick, painless procedure. They gave you a little shot just to numb it, and then they go in and take little samples of the lymph node. And during this time, while we were waiting, it was Thanksgiving, and I was with my family. It was during finals week, so it was very stressful. Some of my family knew, but not everyone, because we didn't know for sure if I had cancer, and just after the year that some of our family members have had, we just decided, to keep it to ourselves until we knew without a doubt what I had. So on November 20th, 7 days after I had seen, or 5 days after I'd seen my oncologist for the first time, she officially diagnosed me with stage 3 classic Hodgkins lymphoma. Hodgkins is the more rare form of lymphoma than non-Hodgkins. 85% of people who do have lymphoma have non-Hodgkins, so again, super lucky. My specific diagnosis is pretty rare, but pretty common amongst people my age. So after I found out I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, my oncologist then asked me if I wanted to do IVF. And I wanted to talk about this in a total separate video because there's just so many details, and especially for my circumstance, it was a lot different than a lot of the women who were at the fertility clinic. So I wanted to share my experience of IVF in another video, but I did decide to harvest my eggs, and I will tell you more about that later. But before I started chemo, I had to have a port place, or I decided to have a port place, which was the best decision. And if you are starting your cancer journey and you have no idea what to do, just know that the port is going to be your best friend. And what this is a little disc. It's about the size of a quarter, and it sits right underneath your skin. Here's my port scar that I have. I've since had mine removed, but they insert this little disc that they can use to administer chemo or to draw blood for blood work. So instead of getting a million needles when you go to the doctor's office, it's only one prick. And I thought it was pretty painless. Some people say it's like the worst part of chemo. I didn't find that. It's a little IV needle. It looks a lot bigger than it actually is, but if the nurses are good, it will not hurt. And it doesn't hurt at all when they take it out, even if it's a bad nurse taking it out. It usually never hurts, but going in sometimes it can hurt a little bit, but I wasn't really fazed by it. So after they access your port, they flush it with saline, like a saline syringe, and then they pull it back because they want to see blood, which is really gross, but they are getting blood to see if the port is working both ways, which is really important before you start chemo. So when they do the port surgery, they insert the disc, and then they put a little incision right here, and then they go up the neck, and that goes right into your jugular vein. And so they're getting the freshest blood, and the chemo is getting pumped out so fast. It's incredible, and you can taste the saline when they push it through. You cannot taste chemo, at least in my experience. I didn't taste it. I didn't get a metally taste. I didn't have that type of chemo. Each chemo drug does something different, so that's why everyone's experiences are so different. So for your first chemo, they access that port and they do the saline flush, and you check in. Everyone knows your name. You walk in, you're like family immediately, so you don't have to draw out your ID every single time you go. Everyone knows you, and you go to the back, you sit down. It's this big U-shaped, or not U-shaped, it's just a very big room, and along the back walls all chairs, and then along the side walls there's chairs. I'd always sit on the side because I liked looking at everyone and looking at the nurses station, which they're in the middle, so you can see, check out everything they're doing. You check in, the nurse comes over, checks your vitals, and then she goes and checks you in, and then the pharmacist is getting all of your chemotherapy drugs ready for you. So those are sent up after they've been like checked, triple checked, quadruple checked, and then they're double checked again before they're administered right in front of you. You gotta confirm some information, and then they read off the drug and the patient number for the nurses, just to make sure that you're getting the right drug, you're not getting anyone else's chemo drugs, because that would be really terrible. So each cancer patient gets their own chemo, which is obvious, but I didn't realize how individualized it actually was. Say you have 2 patients that have breast cancer. There's so many different types of breast cancer that you can't just assume that they are going to be receiving the same drugs. So for instance, I have Hodgkins lymphoma. Well, my chemo regimen was AAVD, which is not so popular compared to a lot, it's not so popular compared to a lot of other Hodgkin's patients that do chemo. They are usually on the regimen of ABVD, which is just slightly different. I did get a stronger and newer drug since I was stage 3, and my oncologist said after I finished treatment that without a doubt I would have needed more chemo if I didn't have that newer drug. So when I would be in the infusion center, I would be there usually from like 8:30 to 3:30 is when I would normally leave, and I would always feel good on chemo days. Before they administer chemo, they will give you some Benadryl and some other medicine and some steroids just to help with the nausea and any inflammation that comes along with chemo. So I'd feel really good for the first few days, and I always loved chemo days because 1, I got to leave the house, and 2, I got to eat whatever I wanted. My friends or family would bring me something that I requested, which was great. It was like having Uber Eats. Whenever I wanted something, I was just like, oh, I wanted this, and I would get it. So whenever I could pull the cancer card, I would, but yeah, you gotta have some good food when you're sitting there for hours. So after they do like the drug check, they start administering them, and they could either be in an IV like drip bag, or they could be in a syringe where they push it, and you know, like just like, you know, how they would for the saline. The drip bags could take anywhere from like 5 to hours, like 5 minutes to hours, depending on how much of it and what kind of drug it is. And then this the push, they're like seconds. They don't actually, no, they're not, because mine that I had to be administered over 5 minutes. So my nurse would sit with me and we'd just talk about whatever, and she would push slowly on the syringe while she inserted the drug into my port, which was like not connected here, but like through like an IV. And then after that, it was just a bunch of sitting, and I was very, very, very lucky that I had friends and family at every single one of my treatments. I had 12 treatments, and I had friends and family at every single one, so thank you if you were one of them. Thank you for letting me talk your ear off and keeping me company. Just thank you. There's nothing really else I can say. Yeah, the hair loss. So this was very traumatic for me. I had beautiful, beautiful blonde hair before. I loved it. It was very healthy. I couldn't curl it at all, but you know, take what the Lord gives you, I guess. And that was really difficult for me when I lost my hair. So they told me I would lose it after my second treatment. And after my first treatment, I started noticing like a difference in my hair, skin, and nails, and everything was just stripped of any nourishment. Like my hair became very nappy, my skin became very dry and texturized. My nails started growing so fast during chemo. It was the weirdest things. Even my nurses said that was weird. And yeah, like your whole body changes, so it was a lot to get used to. But my hair started falling out after my second treatment. It started falling out when I was brushing my hair. I noticed it, like just strands of it in my bed when I would wake up. When I took a shower, just like clumps started falling out. And then when I started brushing my hair, clumps started falling out of my brush. And it was just so alarming and traumatic. And it is just the worst feeling because as a woman, I just think that hair is such a big part of our beauty routine and making ourselves feel beautiful. So it was very hard for me to lose that part of me so quickly, and just to see like my body not deteriorate, but I lost 60 pounds during treatment. My face changed, my hair changed, my skin changed, my body changed, everything changed. So it was just really quick, and not even like a month ago was I healthy, running around with my friends, hiking, playing with my dog, which also having a puppy during treatment is great and not so great because you need to play with them a lot. But as soon as I got sick, my dog knew immediately, and she didn't leave my side 4 days and slept with me a pretty good bit. She didn't sleep with me towards the middle of it just because I was just so sick and I was up, and it just wasn't good for her to sleep with me, so she slept with my sister. But having a dog during all of this, and especially one that you picked out like days after it was born, was just so special. So that was something that really helped me through everything. And I had a few people give me journals as gifts during this time, and I just decided that I didn't want to journal. It was very hard for me to text even. I couldn't even think about writing. Like, I had neuropathy, which is numbness in your fingers or toes, and just makes it hard to use those fine motor skills, to use your phone and stuff like that. So I just decided not to journal anything, and I would remember what I wanted to remember, and that was going to be it. And I wanted to make this video because when I was researching about Hodgkins lymphoma, I didn't know anything about it. Being diagnosed with Hodgkins lymphoma at 25, it was very difficult for me to try to find information or even just shared experience of people who've gone through either Hodgkins themselves or like a similar disease. I'll be uploading my video about my journey through IVF, and I will also be uploading a video about treatment and radiation, just go a little bit more in depth with those to explain them and not have like a 30-minute long video. So thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys, and thank you so much to everyone who has been there for me, who has cried with me, who has laughed with me all through this journey of shit. Okay guys, see you later.